Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome along to the wilds of Suffolk. I'm out here yet again doing what I do, walking along in beautiful locations such as this, giving you my thoughts and opinions on things that are happening in the world, in the public consciousness. If it's your first time here, welcome. I hope you enjoy what I'm doing today. If you're a returning subscriber, or 1,312 of you, I think there are today, welcome back, welcome one and all. It's a real honour and a privilege for me to have you join me for these walks through these beautiful places. Now, if you've been watching the news about what's been going on here recently in the UK, in this part of the world, we had a storm that came through just recently and dumped a lot of water on the whole country. Where I am in Suffolk, we had a place not far from where I am called Framlingham. That's not where I am, that's not far from where I am is what I'm saying, where Ed Sheeran comes from. It was completely underwater. Where we are, we had a bit of water, a few big puddles. My old Honda POS kept on going through it all. Other people with newer cars, not so lucky. So maybe there's a lesson in there somewhere. Maybe all these computer-driven cars, where you have to hook it up to a computer to find out what's wrong with it, didn't last very long in the rain and the wet. Whereas old cars, without all the computer technology, they did really well. So whether there's a lesson in there, I don't know, but little lesson for you. We're all okay. Everyone I know is okay. No loss of property or anything like that, but a little bit wet. So that's enough of the weather report. The weather report from here in the UK. I hope. Well, today is actually looking pretty nice. A little bit cool out here, but otherwise very, very nice day. And I hope it is as wonderful where you are. Now, you didn't come here for the weather report. You came here to listen to what I'm going to talk about today, which is the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Now, that's an old proverb. Oh, hang on, I'm caught up by the vines now. An old proverb that is we're going to be examining today, and that it links into a couple other things. So I'm going to try and do that today, make a bit of sense with things that we're seeing going on in the world, and touch on something that I talked briefly about in my last video, and sort of try and tie a few things together. Now, I came to the idea of doing this video because there was a young guy that I work with who we were talking about how young people are very need a safe space. Let's put it that way. Need safe spaces and are not very equipped to deal with the harsh realities that the world presents us with. You know, cry closets and safe spaces. You know, that kind of thing. And he is a millennial, of course. And he said to me, "Well, your generation's the problem here. Your generation's the problem here because you guys have made us this way." Now, title, Road to Hell is paved with good intentions. And I said to him, look, would you prefer that you were treated the same way as we were when we were kids? If you did something wrong, you got a beat down. And I mean that in a physical, real sense. You got a beating if you did something wrong. Would you prefer to get beaten when you got something wrong? Well, no. Right. So the intention was to change how we did things in this world, so we don't continue on the same cycles that we had in the past, where it was a violent cycle, right? So in order to try and change, we are good-meaning, well-meaning people. We're trying to change how to influence people, children, younger people, without throwing them a beating like was customary when I was young and generations before that. So, well-meaning people were trying to do something positive, but it doesn't always work out that way, does it? So I'm trying to find a new path through here because we've got workmen working in the forest here today. So that's where this when I wanted to come out and do this discussion today. That's where it stemmed from, was that discussion I had with a young guy at my work, where he was saying, well, your generation is responsible for what's going on today with the millennials because you treated us with kid gloves. Now, in my everyday life, I go through my days. I'm a chef for my job. That's what I do. It's not who I am. A lot of people use their job to define who they are. So that's a definition of who they are based on what they do during the day. So, it's well, I'm a chef. That's who I am. What's a chef? I've met chefs from all diverse backgrounds. Or I'm a lawyer, or I'm a surgeon, or whatever it is that you identify as. You're identifying as that, which is your job. Is that really who you are? That's part of our culture now. Is it's what you do for a job. It determines who you are and how you think and what you do with your days. So that's where the idea for this video stemmed from. But I thought in the wider sense, how does that play into how things go in the world in the wider sense, and why we find ourselves in the position where we are now, where there's turmoil throughout the world and only getting worse, and there seems to be no way that we can stop this, what's going on, because I think we can all agree nobody wants another war, or do they? Now, I've been listening to a couple of interviews with Colonel Douglas McGregor. I think he's retired now from the US military. He's been doing a few interviews with different people across different platforms. And some of the things he said were very interesting to me. And one of those things I'm going to tie into what we're doing today, the discussion today, because I think it's fitting, and I think it helps tie things together to make it make more sense. I mean, nothing makes sense in the whole scheme of things. Nothing makes sense, but if you look at the bigger picture and what I'm going to talk about, what he's saying in interviews, it makes a lot more sense. So in the interview, he was saying the US government gives aid money, what's attached to that aid money, well, that's a different story. Much like the Belt and Road Initiative that China's implementing throughout Europe, where they're going to, and Africa as well, Africa and European nations, where they're saying, well, we will link supply chain routes, and it doesn't have to go via current ways, land routes and trains and things like that are going to build infrastructure, but in return they want something back, mineral wealth or whatever it is, claims over your nation's wealth. Now, I touched on this in my last video, saying who owns the wealth underneath the ground, because the governments are giving it away to corporations and other countries as well, whilst also simultaneously robbing the people of that nation the mineral rights that they were born under. Now, Douglas McGregor, he was saying, now the Americans give aid to a lot of different nations. Now, they were giving financial aid to Palestine, and obviously military and financial aid to Israel. Now, you could be seen to be saying that you're funding both sides of a conflict that's ongoing by funding both sides, right? Now, what he says is that the interviewer said to him, but why would you give money to a group of people or an organisation or an ideology that hates the country that's giving them the money? And he said, well, the thinking is that if you give those countries this money, then they're less likely to hate you because you're funding them. You're giving them money so that they can, aid their people. But does it work? I mean, does it really? The Palestinians. Now, before I go any further with this discussion, okay, I want to make it very clear. I've got Israeli friends, I've got Palestinian friends, but when you're in a situation where we are now, no one's right when everyone's wrong. And in this whole conflict that we're seeing, all this conflict that's brewing and erupting into something much larger, everyone's wrong. Hamas was and is completely wrong in their approach to how they are politically dealing with Israel. Israel is completely wrong in how they're dealing with the people of Palestine and Hamas. So while everyone's wrong, all the people caught in the middle of it, the innocent Palestinians, innocent Israelis being killed by these factions fighting on behalf of corrupt governments, the people caught in the middle, the innocent people, the women, the children, the non-combatants, are being killed by the thousands for a political ideology, whether it's Israeli or whether it's Hamas. It's both political ideologies that are having conflict where the innocent civilians are paying. Okay, so everyone's wrong here. All the people funding both sides are wrong. Well, from where we're sitting, they're wrong, but from their position, well, we're doing the right thing because we want to be seen to be doing the right thing, even though, is it right? So that said, I'm not favouring any side. I think both sides are wrong, and I think there's better ways to resolve conflict than picking up a gun or a weapon or a bomb and doing something with it. Now, for those of you who aren't understanding the nature of the thing that's going on over there, Hamas is a political party that, for better or for worse, represents the people of Palestine. But Palestine is not a recognised nation, so obviously the issues are bigger than just saying right and wrong. They're much bigger issues because this political party that controls Palestine, that is the political representatives of the Palestinian people, not 100% accepted by the Palestinian people, but when you have weapons and guns and you can force people to have a belief system against what they see as an oppressive occupation of their land, then they're not going to rise up against it because they're already proven to be violent against their opposition. So if you're rising up against them, then you're their opposition. Now, I've also heard stories that Israel actually funded and created Hamas to give an excuse for why Israel should be taking over the rest of the Palestinian land. So it's not a simple, easy fix conflict that's happening over there, but yet we're funding both sides, or the rest of the Western world is funding both sides because conflict for them is good. Now, I've been saying for 3 years that war is required for the ultimate plan of a world government, which is, it's happening right before everyone's eyes, and they don't want to admit it because then it makes those crazy conspiracy theorists look like they actually have some sense in their heads rather than just the nonsense that we constantly hear from you conspiracy theorists telling us all. Now, this idea of the road to hell is paved with good intentions. We see if we are going to be funding both sides of a conflict or a war or a disagreement or whatever over land, then we are. Yes, I mean, the intentions might be good. The intentions for what they're doing might be good. I mean, let's just give them the benefit of the doubt and say the intentions were good. But it's led us to this point where we have a broader conflict where we discussed in my last video, these people who are claiming to be Palestinian Hamas freedom fighters are going and doing these horrible things to innocent people. And then it creates this wider, broader war amongst the whole Middle East nations. Egypt and Iran and Lebanon and all these other nations are looking at what Israel's doing, their response to what happened, and they're deciding how they're going to respond to that themselves. So people who aren't directly involved are now becoming directly involved because of those actions that were taken by giving money. Now, under Obama, $6 billion in cash was giving to Iran, right? $6 billion cash. 2 different planes or 3 different planes. Pallets full of cash went to Iran. Now all we hear on the TV is, oh, Iran's state-sponsored terrorism and hacking and blah, 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 all the propaganda we're currently hearing about Iran, and Iran's responsible for everything that's going on, of course. That cash that was made available to Iran, so they stopped their nuclear program, it wasn't going to be used for terrorism, of course, so the road to hell, paved in good intentions as well. Then maybe the intention was to stop the Iranian nuclear program, but is that where the money went? I don't know. Do you know? Now, I'm not going to say anything about Iran because I don't know, honestly. I know what we're told. I also know that we're told to hate Russia because, oh, Russia's bad, of course. Hitler, Putin. But as I don't believe anything that comes out of the media or politicians, lying traps, then I don't know what to believe. I believe what I see and take in, and then question that as well. Again, so if we take it another step further, what I touched on in my last video was what's all this war about in Israel anyway, and Jerusalem, and what's so important about that patch of land that everybody wants to claim it as their own, right? Now, I've had this argument, discussion, disagreement many times with people, and talking about a claim on history. Okay, now how does the royal family claim to have the right to be the royal family, to rule over this nation, or a royal family of any nation? How do they have that claim to rule over that nation? Because they own history. Now, this is the history of the Middle East and Jerusalem. King David and the descendants of King David, and these stories are passed through history, and that history gives a claim to all sorts of things. The royal family claim the right to rule because of the history that they claim to own. Or we can trace our lineage back all the way to Vlad the Impaler, who was Dracula by all intents and purposes. So the British royal family proudly proclaims they can trace their lineage all the way back to Dracula. That doesn't sit very well with the stories we hear about missing children going missing in Canada when the Queen went to visit when she was younger. Has nothing to do with it, Chris. And with the 2 princes directly linked to paedophiles, Jimmy Savile and Jeffrey Epstein, who's not dead, definitely didn't kill himself. So this claim to history is what gives people the right to do certain things. Well, this is how they think. So I have the right to that piece of land, say the Jews, the Jewish people, because in our historical books, the Torah, Tetragrammaton, I think it is, Tetragrammaton. Correct me if I'm wrong. Torah and Tetragrammaton talks about history, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago, and the land of Israel and the Israeli people. Obviously, we've all heard the stories about how Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt that were under the rule of the pharaohs. They were made to build the pyramids. Oh shit! That's how they can claim their history, to prove that they had to have a right to that land because they were there before anybody else was. Now, claiming history through historical reference is the power that they have through these holy books, through ancient writings. Now, if you don't have that claim to history, if you don't have that history, then you have nothing. Which is why when you have someone like you were Itzabugs, yeah, from the World Economic Forum, you were Itzabugs, you will own nothing and you will be happy. Yeah? Klaus Schwab. Excuse my bad accent, but Klaus Schwab said you will own nothing and be happy. Why is it that a certain group of people gets to own everything and the rest of us, well, we own nothing because we own no history? Now, I did a talk a while ago about wars and why wars are fought and where wars are fought, indeed. And what is so special about certain areas that people want to lay claim to it? Like Afghanistan. What's so special about Afghanistan that first the Russians were fighting over it, then the Americans went in there? Everybody wants to lay claim. The British were over in Afghanistan as well, of course. Everyone wants to lay claim to Afghanistan. Why is that? Why is everyone wants to lay claim to the Middle East, especially Jerusalem? What's there? History. History. That's what it's all about, is laying claim to history. And if you can lay your claim to history, then you have a historical reference to go forward with to make a claim against either land or gold or whatever it is that you're laying claim to through your historical reference that you are claiming through history. You with me? Does that all make sense? So we find ourselves in this place where the world is literally going to hell because people have placated people that are making stupid decisions, poor decisions, with no recompense to themselves, with no there's no feedback and there's no accountability for those people who have done these things because, well, my intention was to do X, Y, and Z, but the actual outcome was war, famine, disaster, financial ruination for everyone. And during that, you lose your claim to history. Now, we've all heard the saying, winners write the history. Well, the winners write the history, and because the winners write the history, then they get to make a claim on the history of ownership of that history. Make sense? Now, I've had this discussion, as I said many times before, with people, especially to do with Africa. And you have people in South Africa or in Zimbabwe or Rhodesia, as it used to be called. And that you have second, third, fourth generations of white farmers that lived in those areas and farmed those areas and worked the land and employed locals and tried to create something in a land that they called their own. And then the people of those nations said, well, you stole the land from us. You stole the land from us and we want it back. So, it goes back to all this claim of, natural, native, indigenous people of those nations laying claim to the land where they were born and invading forces or, settling forces coming to take that land from them. Now, this is where it gets a bit tricky in the how far do you want to take this? Because if we go back to Africa and we had warring tribes who would go to war with another tribe and take their lands because they had much more fertile hunting or gathering areas, where you could gather food, and they wanted to take that from those other people, so they invaded. So one tribe went and took land and from another tribe. So at the end of the day, it was all this changing hands of land, of treasures, of history, was always by the person with a bigger force. So war has always determined ownership of land, history, and everything that goes along with it. Rewards and wealth and mineral wealth and all that kind of thing. Now, I'm putting it to you today. Wow. That was an awfully big blast. I don't know whether you heard that. I don't know what that means. Maybe they're blowing something up out here. How far do we take that back? And what do we do with it from there? I mean, the original inhabitants of America, the native Indians, were warring with each other constantly warring with each other. So who lays claim to the land that the victor eventually turned up with. The victor now has a claim to say, well, we won that fight, we won that land from the other tribe, or from the other, the Sioux Nation, or from the from the Mohicans, or whatever. We won that battle, we won that land from those people, so we conquered them, so it's ours now. How far back do we go? Do you want to blame it all on the European settlers? Do you want to blame it all on the Russians? How far should we take this? And what do we do going forward to stop this from happening again? Because at the end of the day, if the only way that we can solve a conflict is through war, we're going to have perpetual wars. And if the only way we can solve our history is with war, we're going to have perpetual war. So everything seems to be hinged on, to the victor goes the spoils, and to the victor goes the history. And here we are again, coming up to yet another situation where an armed conflict is inevitable, because people want to claim the history of a land, a mineral wealth, or whatever it is, a right to rule over a land, a landmass, or a group of people, because we have the bigger military power. Now, if we look at the way that the world currently is, and has been since the Second World War, the American military, I should say, not the Americans, because the American people are wonderful people, much like every other people I've met in the world. I love Chinese people, I love American people, I love people from all the different countries in Africa, but when we start to sort of move up into the upper echelons of wealth and power, political influence, then that all the borders and everything else goes away, and it is all about singularly them and their cronies, which is the system we currently live in. Crony capitalism. It's not capitalism. My kids are getting brainwashed on the internet. They're, capitalism's the problem, because capitalism isn't the problem. Capitalism is probably the best option for us, given that in our current system we need to have an exchange of something, an exchange of energy. At the moment it's money, for people to get off their ass and do something. If you have people that have the ability to do nothing, play PlayStation all day, get wasted, live a life where it's complete, I don't have to go to work, I can just rely on the government, give me everything I need. Well, you're a slave to the government, obviously. But we have a situation now where the good intentions, like providing social security in this country for people who aren't able to work. So if you were in a period where you finished your job, or for medical reasons or whatever it is, you were unable to work, or you couldn't get a job, that social security was there as a backstop to help you in that stopgap between when you left one job and you went into another one. But now people have weaponized the system so that, I don't want to work, I just want to stay home and smoke weed all day, or I want to do whatever. Then they know how to game the system to ensure that they can do that and have enough money to sort of just get by. Now, I'm not going to pin it all on the people who are benefit cheats. Look at the politicians. Look how much they wrought the system. I mean, it makes the benefit cheats look like a drop in the bucket compared to the way that politicians, corporations, and everyone else who has the ability to milk the system does. Many corporations don't pay any tax, like Google doesn't pay tax. I mean, how can a massive corporation that is international pay no tax in the country that it operates in? Oh, that's because they create jobs, Chris. They create jobs, and that tax revenue from the employees, not the company who's employing employees, of course, but the employees themselves are going to pay the tax on behalf of the company. Unless, of course, as we've spoken about before, those people, or most millionaires and billionaires, have everything in trust. So they're not going to pay tax anyway, because they don't report an income. How are you going to tax someone that has no income and everything's held in trust? Well, you know what? I'm a beneficiary of a trust. I don't pay any tax because I don't own anything and I don't earn anything. So the whole system is based around fraud, and the fraud comes from the creation of money that is backed by nothing. It's called fiat because it is by fiat demand. The government demands that you accept this £10 note or this £20 note or $10 note, wherever you are in the world, as legal tender, and it's claimable against the bank that issued it, which is here in this country, the Bank of England. Now, what does the Bank of England have to back their word? Well, that is the future tax receipts of all the chattel that are going to be working in the country. So they want more workers to come into the country, which is why you want a bigger population, replacement migration, remember? Because then you have more tax chattel. So the corporations don't have to pay tax, it's more people. That's what we need, more tax chattel. The people who aren't going to fight back, the people who aren't going to push back against these corrupt governments, people who are coming from poorer nations who are, who are willing to take less pay for their hourly rate to get by, because they're coming from a situation where they had nothing in the first place. So we've got to this place now where well-meaning people, well, we're going to say well-meaning people, have created systems and environments that are leading us down a road that benefits no one except the people who are skimming from the government purse, or the corporations that obviously operate without reprisals and without paying tax. So what do we do? I mean, here we are. I've been listing all the problems and all this claim to history and claim to wealth and mineral wealth and all the things that go along with that. It's all well and good noticing the problem, and this is why I come out to do these videos, because it is, in the broader sense, trying to make people understand how these things align to help you understand how we got to this place, this conflict, where there's conflict all over the world, where it is a bunch of psychopaths fighting with each other, using us as pawns in their game of power, money, manipulation and control. And if you work people up enough, those pesky Russians are coming to get you tomorrow. What's happening in America with we have to ban guns, they're bad. I bet you the people in Israel wish that they had guns. When you got a pile of people coming over on a parachute with machine guns shooting people, I bet you those people there wish they had guns to fight back. But no, it's too dangerous for the average person to have guns, because if there isn't an invading force, well, we don't want to fight them back, do we? Well-meaning, well-intentioned people, we'll say that, well-intentioned people, and what did it lead to? Hell. So at first we have to recognise that we all have to take personal responsibility for ourselves and for our actions and for our surroundings and for the environment that we're in. Okay? So the politicians need to know, the politicians who pretend to represent us need to know when they step out of line. That's what, and I'm not talking about violence here, or marching and holding up a placard that says, "We want this," or yelling out, "We want this," because they don't care. They don't give a rat's ass about what you do, what you say. They really don't care. Before we went into Iraq in this country, there was millions of people in the street, millions, that you never saw on the television, by the way, not even in this country. Millions of people were marching. Millions of people. 2 million people in the streets of London marching against the war. We don't want another war. What do the politicians say? Fuck you. It's too important for us not to go there because our oil is going grabbing, and if we're not there, somebody else will get it. But at the same time, they're saying, well, we don't want oil. We don't want oil. We don't want to use oil. We're going to cut all that off, but we still have to take control of the oil producing nations. Laying a claim to mineral wealth that's under the ground. Right? Okay. Now, from what I've heard, I don't know for sure, but from what I've heard, in Sweden, it's like 50% tax, I think, but the rents are cheaper and all those sorts of things are cheaper because the government offsets it with the money that comes in from the oil reserves in Sweden. Now, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's what I've heard. Now, would that be a better way to go? Yeah, maybe. But we have to put pressure on our politicians to make them do what we want. They're there to represent us. Now, currently, we have the only thing that we have power over is elections. Well, as I've said before, there's no such thing as elections. It's called selections. It's just the silent S at the beginning that we don't get to hear about. Which is why we have a Prime Minister in this country, Rishi Sunak, who's never had a vote. Never got voted in, or his previous Prime Minister, Liz Truss, who was there for a couple of weeks and then gave 40 billion to the oil companies here in the UK that she used to work for, by the way, and then was out. Delivered a budget. There's 40 billion to the oil companies to lower electricity prices for the average person. Did it? Did it? Fuck. But never had an election for either of them. And here we are in the UK being ruled over by a non-elected leader who is spending our money and putting us into wars for what? What do we gain? What do we gain? What does the average person gain out? Oh, well, they're coming to attack us, Chris. It's I guarantee you, if an invading force landed on this nation, that you would have a lot of people would just lay down and just join whoever the invading force was. Oh, I don't want to die. This is how we got to this state, placating. Now, I'm not an advocate for war or violence, but I am an advocate for self-defense. And that self-defense also comes when I'm not just talking about the barrel of a gun, I'm talking about being able to defend yourself financially and physically and mentally against everything that's going to be thrown at you. We have to stand up for ourselves and stop this this nonsense that keeps on getting purported to be for the benefit of the people. It's not. None of it is. It is for the benefit of the corporations who are producing weapons of war. It is for the benefits of the politicians who are invested in those companies. And it is for the benefit of the politicians who have those same corporations that finance their campaigns. If they didn't do what they did, they wouldn't have the financing for their campaign to run for political office in the first place. So there's a big problem. The creation of money is the problem. Creation of money backed by nothing is the issue. Now, as we go forward, things like CBDCs are going to be released, whether you like it or not. It's going to happen. We are going to digital money. Now, there's positives and negatives to everything to do with digital money. We have to ensure that we're putting our support and our money and our time, energy into understanding the things that can free us rather than enslave us. Now, I've talked about this on this channel, decentralized currencies, rather than centralization. Decentralization is the key to everything. I'm investing my money into decentralized currencies or assets, let's put it that way, and into real world things that I feel can change the landscape of the world we live in, where I spend my money, where I spend my time. Businesses that don't align with my values, I don't frequent at all. I don't use them. So the power comes from us. We are the power. We have a very small number of people that rule over us. And much like in a prison camp, we have a small amount of guards for guarding a lot of people, or much like an elephant that gets chained to a big wooden stake when it's very young with a big heavy chain, learns that if it's tied to a pole when it's young, even when it gets bigger and it could easily pull that chain out of the ground and that pole out of the ground, it doesn't, because it's learned over time that it shouldn't even try because it will fail. This is the state that we find ourselves in. Don't even bother going against the government because you'll fail. Don't even bother going against the corrupt credit card companies because you'll fail. Don't even bother going against these corporations because you fail. That's all we hear. Don't bother trying because you'll fail. I've done some interviews with people who are talking about getting rid of your debt legally because it's all created through fraud. Now, I have personally experienced the ability to cancel and get rid of debt and pay nothing because it's all based on fraud. So we have to make our personal decisions about how we're going to do things, where we're going to shop, what we're going to spend our money on, what we're going to spend our time on, and where we place our energy. And does it benefit us individually or as a whole for our society. So the onus is on us, and if you really don't think that your politician's representing you, write them a letter, phone them, get on their case, and spread messages and share information with people to make them understand as well, so that we're not acting individually, we're acting as a group, we're acting as a larger organisation, because it's going to get to the point where corporations, if they don't have funds coming in, I mean, the other issue, the other side of this is the ESG nonsense, where the massive corporations are getting money from the likes of BlackRock and State Street and Vanguard and all these massive world-owning corporations that own the world. They get their money from them, ESG scores, to carry on. But you have to follow this message. You have to have pronouns. You have to have all this sort of stuff to have a high ESG score, so that you have enough money to keep operating. So that you have these massive organisations are funding this message that we get through the media, through social media. They're funding it because they know that if the people turn against these corporations, like what happened in America with Bud Light, with their woke messaging, and all the people went, well, we're not going to buy your beer anymore. So Anheuser-Busch tried to turn around and went, oh, no, we're changing how we do things. Too late. But they're still getting their money through ESG, environmental social governance, credits from these massive organisations like BlackRock and Vanguard that they're owned by the way. So the orders come down from up above. You will do this. This is the message that you have to do, because if you don't, no money for you. So our responsibility as individuals and our society is to choose what we want and place our energy, our time and our money there, and what we don't want, ignore it and let that business go down the toilet, or actively speak against it to hurry that along, so we get rid of these woke corporations that are trying to guide us and our society down a road that benefits no one. This road to hell leading to, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Let's not their good intentions get in the way of what we want to do as a society and move forward together. Now, one last message I wanted to leave you with. We hear a lot of people, people that are doing their best to try and share a message of love is going to conquer all. This message, I have a good friend of mine, Joanna, who's sharing this message, love conquers everything, love is the only way that we can get through this. Now, I agree. I want to say that first, but the issue is that there's messages that get mixed up with that message. Love is love. Love is love. You can't say that it's not right for an adult to love a child in that sexual way. You can't say that, because love is love and love is everything. You see where we get these messages mixed up. Now, I've been told hate is no good and the whole anger and hatred in your heart is no good, and it's not. But at the same time, every emotion that we feel is counterbalanced against its opposite emotion. So how can we truly know love if we don't know hate? How can we truly know anything if we don't know the opposite? How can we truly know freedom if we don't know what it is to be imprisoned? And this dualistic world that we live in, this yin, yang, black, white, yes, no, on, off, ones, zeros, the one. So in this dualistic reality that we inhabit, this reality that we live in, these emotional responses are there for a reason, and we should experience those emotional responses, but yet at the same time being able to apply logic and reasoning to what we're seeing, what we're understanding, and how we're responding to it. And logic and reason says that nothing that's happening right now is logical or reasonable. And the people who are supposed to be acting on our behalf are not doing so. So we have to stand against them, and we have to, we outnumber them millions to one. So we have to join together and understand, put all of our differences aside, because the things that divide us are minimal. The things that we all agree with, no one wants to live with war. No one wants to live with violence and conflict. No one does. So those kind of things are the things that unite us. And as a united people standing against people that are trying to force us to fight with each other is strong enough, that love bond is strong enough between all of us that we can conquer anything, including these people who have a claim to whatever they claim to have, a history or violence or whatever their claim is. There's enough of us to stand against it. That means we don't have to follow this road to hell that is paved with these good intentions. Now that said, go out into the world, do good and be good, and you can change the world with the way that you talk, the way that you think, the way that you interact with people, the information that you share. So if you find some information, or you find this information worthwhile, then share it, and let's get on the same page so we can oppose this nonsense and this violence and this bullshit that's being served to us as reality. Let's do that. But most important, look after yourself, look after each other, and that's all we can do, because if we do that, then we make the world a better place. So do that. All right. Thanks so much for joining me, one and all. Really appreciate your time, and what a lovely day it is out here. Hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you real soon. Ciao for now.